Welcome back to Iron Archery Outdoors, guys. Um, so I was just going through after I put the 80-pound limbs. Me and a good buddy of mine, Jesse Brigantes with Bergie Bowsmith. We put the 80-pound limbs on the Envision. New unbound archery strings. So far, it's been an absolute awesome setup. But I'm just going back through. We had a shoot this past weekend in Trempealeau, Wisconsin. It's a fun shoot. Actually ran into a good buddy of mine and his kid and his wife. So I ended up shooting with them. And me and the boy went down there, had a great time. But I noticed some things with my sight. Something wasn't totally right. But I'm going to kind of show you what some important things to look for are and why I feel they're important, because I notice a difference. And it's something you should check out. Some people don't feel like it's that big of a deal, but my opinion, it is. And it's worth setting it right so it's not a problem. And it's just another thing out of the equation where something may potentially become that doesn't need to become. Okay? So we're setting the axes. I'm setting the axis on my Excel landslide. So I previously had it set, but I've done some moving around and stuff like that, so stuff changes, okay? But I'm going to show you why they're important, okay? So as you can tell here, I have my string. I always plumb my first and second axis off of my string. That's another very controversial subject where a lot of people do it off the riser, which is fine. Do it how you want. I've found for me, best works off the string, because that is the main thing on your bow. Okay? When you're shooting and your string is not plumb, your arrow is not sitting in your rest down the center. The weight is not in the center. It's off to a side. Other stuff is just different. Okay? I always set everything off the string. If you set it off the riser, go with what works for you. Okay? But anyway, regardless, is you're going to have your string or your riser level. Okay? But what you're going to notice here now is right here. My sight rail right here, where my sight goes up and down, right here, is not plumb. Okay? It is not plumb to my string. Okay? Just to take off right there. It is not level. Why is that an issue? Okay? So the issue is when you are shooting, okay, my sight is leaned this way. It's leaning toward the outside of my bow. So when I'm aiming, and if your sight rail here is not level with your string, but your bubble in here is level with your string, you're going to be thinking your sight is level. But what's happening is you might be good at 20, maybe 30, depending how bad it's off. But the farther you go down, when your sight is leaned this way toward your riser, okay, your sight is tracking at an angle, which means, so as this one sits, the farther I go, my sight is tracking to the left. So what is that doing? As I go down, my pins are gradually moving a little bit to the left. Therefore, you're naturally holding where you're originally going to hold on the bullseye, right? But now your arrows are impacting farther right. So what are you doing? You're adjusting your sight, right? But in reality, the problem could be your first axis adjustment, if you have one. Some sites don't have one. Okay, there's actually quite a few sites that don't have one, but it's becoming more and more a thing. A prime example, a site that used to be on my fiance's bow was a CBE Tech hybrid, and that did not have a first axis adjustment. And we actually had this problem where the farther she was shooting, she would gradually shoot, I think it was farther to the right. And I was like, what is going on, you know? And I was watching her, and she was shooting fine. And I thought maybe she was just pulling the shot and causing her to shoot to the right. Okay? And for a right-handed person. Okay, if you're a left-handed person, you're pulling the shot, you're going to shoot left. But it just kept going over, and then she'd shoot fine, closer distance, but as farther she got, it gradually went farther to the right, farther to the right. And I was like, what the heck is going on? So I started looking at it, and I never caught it before. And I noticed there was never a first axis adjustment. So I was like, huh, okay, well, I wonder if it's even actually level with my string. Okay, and I put it on, and the level was way off. So her sight was drastically tracking to the left as the farther went down. So same scenario here. But it was quite a bit worse than this one. It was way off. So that was a big thing. So I'm like, all right, this has to come off, and we need to change to a different sight. A sight that doesn't have a first axis adjustment, but is actually plumb or level with the string, that is actually a lot closer naturally. Or B, go with a sight that has that adjustment. It is very important. Okay. Now, the other reason it is very important, because if your first axis is off, your third axis is never going to be right. Okay. Third axis is when you're shooting a decline or an incline, and your scope housing actually moves. Your scope housing actually moves this way. That is changing your level at an angle, this way or this way. Okay. But you can adjust them with this Hamskea Gen 2 third axis device with this rod here. But when you do that, you will actually set that off of your riser. Okay. And that is basically checking your, well, you're not checking it off your riser technically. You're clamping this to your riser, and then you're putting the top little bead and this bottom little bead here on a perfectly vertical line on a wall, like a door frame, but check it before you do it. But what I do is, I used to have a line on my wall, but what I'll do is I'll actually put a line on this wall with my laser, a perfectly vertical line. Then when you line those beads up, these beads up on that line, then you look at what your level is showing you. If your level is out this way, then your scope needs to pivot away from you. If your bubble is on that side, then your scope needs to pivot into you. So what that is doing is telling you at a degree of incline or decline that your bow is level. Okay, and this is a huge thing when shooting on side hills too, where you'll notice it, because when you're shooting on a side hill, your body will naturally favor downhill, and generally, unless you're really pushing in or pulling the shot, generally you will shoot to the downhill side. And a lot of guys are like, what the heck, you know? And you won't notice it all the time, except for a little bit farther shots. We'll say like 40, 50 yards or farther. So that's where your level comes into big handy, is making sure your bow is level on those side hills. Now, you put a side hill at an incline or a decline. Now you're fighting two levels. So now hopefully you can catch my drift of how this can really drastically throw off your shot and you're not even knowing it. Okay, so this is where the importance is when you are setting your first axis, get it as close as you can possibly get it. You know, take the extra few minutes and make sure you get these two bubbles to match up as perfect as you can get it. Okay. Secondly, your second axis adjustment, which on this, if you have the XL landslide, is these two screws right here. You loosen these and you pivot. You're pivoting this rail this way. Okay. You just crack them loose just so you can just turn it a little bit. Okay. I wish XL would change this design. I'm hoping they did on their new XL driver. I'm not sure if they did. I haven't really looked at it that much. There's kind of very limited stuff about it yet. But I'm hoping they changed it to like a set screw adjustment. It's so much easier to do. But it can still be done fairly easy. You just got to pay attention. Okay, your second axis adjustment is going to be right in here. That screw right there. Okay, it's kind of finicky to do because you got to move this out of the way. Kind of sucks, but it's this screw, and then there's one underneath. Okay, those right here and right here. Those two screws are adjusting your scope this way, your actual level with your string. Okay, so then you're adjusting the scope, not the rail. That's where you're setting this bubble inside. As you can see, that bubble is also off. Maybe you can see better than this one. Okay, it is slightly off. It's not terrible, but it's slightly tilted too high. Okay, so you're going to adjust your second and your first axis based off your string. Then you will do your third axis, like I said. Okay, where you actually put an arrow in, draw back. Don't draw your bow back without an arrow in it, because if something happens, you're going to regret it. Okay, if something's going to happen, have an arrow in it, for crying out loud. And obviously point in a safe direction, like directly at a wall. Okay. Then you adjust your third axis. And it takes a couple times. It works really good if you can have somebody with you and they kind of adjust as you hold it. It can be a little tricky, but it works nice that way too. But doing it yourself isn't that bad. But ultimately, in the end, you're just setting your third axis. I hear this question a lot about, well, I hear people say about just setting it, adjusting it in a jig or in your vise, like here, right? Where you just pivot the bow down 45 degrees and adjust it, right? You can get it marginally close, but you're not factoring your natural human body torque, stuff like that, your grip torque, stuff like that. Okay, that's factoring that in. Now, when you go to shoot it in, people kind of get into a confusion of, well, I shot it in, but it doesn't seem like it's good. Okay, well, generally two things happen. A, you're not shooting steep enough. What I like to do is try to find a hill that I can shoot as close to like 45 degrees as I can. Secondly, be very honest with yourself. If you are, put a piece of tape right down the middle of your target and shoot for that tape. Okay, be honest with yourself. If you're favoring the left side of that thing and you think, well, maybe it's probably just me, it might not be. Okay, just do the adjustment and do it again and shoot again. Okay, now the second part of it is most people don't shoot far enough, so they don't even realize that it's off. Okay, you will not see this at 20 yards, maybe even not as much even at 30 yards for a third axis adjustment. Now, if you're a shooter that you can shoot tacks, okay, just stack arrows all day long, right, at a reasonable distance, you're probably going to be able to notice it. Okay, use a fairly, don't use like a piece of duct tape. Use something fairly thin, like a 1/2 or 3/4 inch masking tape, or even a 1 inch masking tape. Something that's pretty visible, like a white masking tape. Obviously, if you have a black target, or if you have a white target, use something other, like something with red tape or black tape. Electrical tape works too. Something that you can see good enough, easily enough to be able to shoot at a defined line. Okay. So what I try to do is I try to shoot a minimum of 40, 50 yards. The farther you can shoot downhill at as close to like 40, 45 degrees as you can, the better. Okay, if you can shoot 45 degrees downhill at 100 yards, sweet. As long as you can shoot it decent. Okay, that's a long shot downhill at that angle. It's a tough shot, very tough shot. But you are going to notice if your third axis adjustment is way off, also going back to your first axis is way off, you are going to see it for sure. Okay, now what I noticed with my first axis adjustment at this shoot was like 20, 30, 40, it was pretty good, but I noticed I was always favoring a little bit. And I was like, okay, but first shoot of the year, actually got out, different terrain, stuff like that with the new limbs and strings, okay. Didn't think too much about it yet, but I kind of noticed it, staying to one side. So I'm like, all right, well, then we got to a target, it was like 76 yards. I was like several inches over. I'm talking 6-8 inches. So I'm like, what the heck, Okay, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm just pushing a little bit harder for some reason. Well, 3 more shots, same thing. I'm like, all right, something's not right. Okay, we're in the middle of a shoot. Obviously, nothing I can do about it. Shot the shootout. So, coming back to check 2 now, and now I realize that my first axis is off. Also, my second axis is slightly off. So, being they're off, I'm going to set them back to where they got to be. Set my third axis. Then, when I get time, I'm going to shoot my third axis in. Obviously, if you are planning to do a TAC event or like a beast mode archery challenge like here in Wisconsin does, but you are going to experience long shots, declines, inclines at all various degrees, okay? And they're going to be steep. And if you do not dial these things in, your first, second, third axis adjustments, especially your third axis, okay, you're going to be frustrated for a while, okay? So make sure you do this. Take the steps to do it, okay? It doesn't take long. But it's steps that so many people are just like, well, I'm never going to use that anyway. Don't bother about it. And then they get mad when they're shooting 4 inches to the right at 50 yards over and over and over and over and over again, no matter how much they move their sight. Okay? Then they're, oh, now I'm good. Now they come back to 20 yards, and now they're shooting to the left. They're like, what is going on? It's the same difference with like crossbow scopes or even rifle scopes. If your reticle is not perfectly perpendicular, perfectly plumb, the farther you shoot, it's going to favor one way. Same thing, okay? Make sure everything is in line and make sure it's good, okay? So I hope that helps some of you guys out. Excuse me for my sinus congestion going on. It's been a heyday for sure. So hope that helps you out. If you got any questions, drop a comment below. I'll do my best to help you out most I can. I'm located here in Maryland, Wisconsin, kind of west central Wisconsin, about 45 minutes southeast of Eau Claire, about an hour north of La Crosse. So kind of right there in the middle. If you got any questions, let me know. Or if you're in the area, you need help doing something, let me know. Drop a comment below. Hit me up on Facebook under Will Cody. And I'll help you out. Until then, shoot straight. Have fun.